Welcome again to Clutching Our Pearls. We are in resilience mode today. And a lot of times resilience and leadership don't go as hand in hand as we would like to think that they do. I'm very thrilled to introduce you to Jody Walkerling, and she is a resilience culture specialist. For more than 25 years, she's worked with financial, educational, service, and product-based organizations in a very, very wide array of managerial roles. And during that time, Jody really witnessed the cultural clashes and the brunt of the stress that comes with being in those roles and not always having things go the way that you'd like them to go. But in 2016, she reached a turning point and she felt that she was teetering on the edge of a breakout, which I'm sure at this point we can all resonate with. And she decided to become a Success Principles certified trainer, a health and life coach, and a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner. Those of you that know me know that I have a deep and undying crush on Jack Canfield, the author of the Success Principles, and am a neuro-linguistic programming junkie. So Jody and I are basically twins. She's just a little further on the other side of the pond than we are. Now she pairs those skills with her corporate knowledge and understanding of leadership and helps others overcome their resilience challenges. She also just happened to write the incredible book, World-Class Leadership. Jody, thank you so much for making time to be on Clutching Our Pearls today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Marie. What a fantastic introduction. And it's fantastic to connect with another Jack Canfield junkie. So wonderful.
Do you have a crush on him, or is that weird?
Come on, I read his book once a year.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to kink shame you, Marie.
It's a keeper.
My first one was Bing Crosby, so I obviously have a silver fox thing going on. I'm not normal. Okay. So
it's very early in Australia. How are you this morning, Jody?
I'm doing very, very well. We're heading into summer, so it's quite warm. The sun's out. It's lovely. It's 9 o'clock-ish in the morning.
Well, and here in Chicago, it is pitch black, and we are all about to hibernate. But right now, I'd like to heat things up with a little tea serving on resilience. One of the things that we always hear is, as women, we are taught that we have to have resilience, that you've got to find the resilience within yourself. And that's not commonly, or at least stateside, it's not commonly a conversation that's had with our male counterparts. Why is that? Where does that come from?
It's interesting. I think it comes around women's approach to challenges in their life versus men's approach to challenges. So women will do things like ask for help, and they're more, I mean, I'm talking generalization. It's not every woman, obviously, but as a general rule, women are more likely to ask for help. They're more likely to put up their hand, but they're also more likely to want to do everything and think that everything's on their shoulders and that they have the responsibility. Men's a little bit different. A lot of men, again, not all, but a lot of men putting up their hand and saying, I'm struggling, or even admitting it to themselves, is something that doesn't come naturally to them, and reaching out for help, especially around mental health or So most men, if they need somebody to help them build a fence, they're fine in asking for help for that. But if they need something that's sort of more well-being focused, a lot of them are less likely to put up their hand and ask for help. So in terms of resilience, it has quite a difference in how it shows and how they're challenged and how they manage resilience in their life.
Women are expected to be more communal and more, I think, more fragile. And so if a woman asks for help, it kind of confirms the bias that, yes, women are the weaker sex. So I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that's false. Just
I heard the intake of breath, Jody. That was good.
I know. I'm like, oh, no. But if that's the stereotype, if that we are weaker when we ask for help and community and support, it can confirm that. And I think that with men, if they ask for those things, it goes against their stereotypes and against the biases.
So before we dive too far down this resilience road, Jodi, I'm interested to hear what your definition of resilience is.
So to me, there's a couple of different elements of it. The first one is having certain things in your life so that when challenges come up, because we nearly all have challenges in our lives, when things come up, that we stay in a state of calm and clear thought as much as possible. And there's various things you can do in your life to help you with that. And there's the opposite side, there's things in your life that work against you on that as well. The second side is really tuning into responses, especially in your body or mentally, that tell you that I'm being stressed, my resilience is being tested, spot it, and then there's ways to actually bring yourself back to calm. Because when your resilience is tested and when you're feeling stressed, there's certain things that happen physiologically in your body, and there's also things like your thinking part of your mind doesn't work as well and that sort of stuff. So you want to bring yourself back to calm, spot it, bring yourself back to calm. But kind of the third side is nearly all of us have had times in our life where our resilience has been tested to the point where there's lots going wrong, there's challenges all over. Having that almost like inner fortitude to see the light at the end of the tunnel and work your way through short without being in a victim mode and without being in a disempowered kind of state, see the light at the end of the tunnel and work your way through it, even sometimes if that feels like working your way through mud.
Yeah, I know that I've definitely had, I call them my Jello days, where I feel like every step I take, I'm walking through Jello and I can't necessarily see and I can't move as easily as I'd like to move. But what are my other options? What are my other options? To sit down and cry, to not take care of my kid or my team or my loved ones. And I think I learned this lesson so starkly when I had lost Jim, and one of my there were two women that seemed to materialize out of nowhere when we found him. And one of them their mother had lost her husband. And she told me, she said, you've got time to figure this out. My mom took about 2 or 3 years where we lived with our grandparents and she got herself together. Well, I am not of a socioeconomic level that I can take 3 years off. I had 3 weeks to figure out how I was going to run a family business. And I think that there is, or at least in my experience, there is almost an assumption or the idea that women can fall apart and they're almost expected to, whereas men don't have that option, right? And when you look at it through the filter of that women do of, I've got to take care of everything, it's almost like we push ourselves to a point where it's inevitable that we fall apart. How do you balance knowing that you have responsibilities and commitments to yourself, to others? And if you've read Jack Canfield's book, the very first chapter is you take 100% responsibility for your life. No matter what happens, you are the filter. How do you help people wrap themselves around that concept when falling apart is okay for half of the world?
it's such a, I'm so glad that you raised that, Marie. I guess it is a process of really getting to know yourself and tuning into yourself. And it's also, I think one thing that you said in there that is quite important is when there's certain emotions when things are tested in our life, and people label them as bad emotions. It's outside of frame, but I put quotation marks there. I don't think they're bad emotions. They're normal emotions, like your fear, anger, sadness, that sort of stuff. They are all normal emotions, and you've got to almost set up your life so that you have permission, you're giving yourself permission to actually express those in safe ways that are not going to hurt you or anybody else. And by expressing them and processing them, you are actually allowing them to not be this thing over your head that causes you ongoing problems. You're processing them and moving them on. So a good example is one of the things that women do is we cry. So taking an hour or so to sit down and have a very, very solid cry can actually do enormous good for you in terms of processing the emotions and moving it on. So we need to give ourselves
through your body instead of denying it and locking it.
Yep, absolutely. So the body holds, you're on a really good point there, Suzi, the body holds most of our trauma and emotions unless we allow ourselves to feel them and move them on. And this is my unqualified opinion, but I think that's one of the real reasons why suicide rates in men are a lot higher than women, because we actually give ourselves permission to process stuff, whereas men often will push it aside. Now, that is, I don't have studies or anything to back that up, but that's my personal perspective and what I have, what I've viewed over the years.
Well, and I can remember being around 15, maybe 16 years old. And at this point, I had been a caretaker for my mother since I was about 3 or 4, because she became disabled when she was pregnant with me. I started working at around 10 or 11. To pay for just little treats at school and then to help the family. And we experienced homelessness. We experienced a great range of things. And I started to break out in blisters all over my hands and feet. And this kept going and kept going. And I found myself in a delightfully abusive relationship from 16 to 24. And it got worse and worse. And he told me, well, that must be an STD on your hands. Well, that's neat. And I went to a doctor who looked at me and said, that's stress. Your body has produced so much cortisol because you are in such a fight or flight mode that your skin, which is your largest organ, is trying to push it out, and your hands and your feet are the most porous part of your body. And I didn't believe her. Because I was 24, I knew everything. But it's amazing how the internalization of that kind of stress, that kind of survival mode, will force its way out of your body. Either you will push it down with food or you will stop eating. You will have funkiness happen that makes you ashamed to shake somebody's hands, or you will start to just physically atrophy on some level. And
your whole body is screaming except for your mouth.
Exactly. And I've even noticed there's different parts of the body that will react according to different stress moments. Like the lower back is highly associated with financial insecurity. And there's all of these incredible studies that talk about the toxicity of not releasing these emotions.
Yeah.
How do you identify, especially if you're leading, whether you're leading all of those children you accidentally made or a company,
accidentally.
Hey, listen, after the pandemic, I'm pretty sure anybody with more than one started to rethink that decision. But how do you find a way to release in a way that is healthy and that actually feels like a release? Because I don't need to sit and listen to meditation music unless I want to kill people. But that's what everybody thought, would really, really help. How do you find your center?
Yeah. It's interesting that you raise meditation, because if you're somebody who meditation works for, it's fantastic. I'm a real meditation person. But if you're not, it's like you're either going, what do I do now? Or you want to go, it either works for you or it doesn't, or you can actually build up your meditation muscle. But it's not the go-to for everybody by any means. So it is around finding what is your go-to. So when I coach with clients, I will have a chat to them about what actually gives them joy, what actually makes them feel good, what actually gives them a sense of peace. And what that does for different people is an amazing range of things. So I had one client who years before did cross stitches, and she used to find that really good in her youth, and in us chatting it came out that was something that made her feel really good, so she started doing it again and it had the same effect. So it's being really aware in yourself of what are the things that give you that in yourself, and what that can be for an individual person is a huge range. For some people it's going out and doing like a boxercise class where they're actually getting out physical aggression or physical activity. And for some people it's meditation. For some people it's going into the garden. For some people it's going out with friends and spending a couple of hours talking about whatever. So it's really, one of the key things is really tuning into yourself. And one of the best indications is what is in my life has made me feel happy, peaceful, at rest. So what are those things in my life that have actually made me feel good, and then tap into those and make them as much as possible a habit in your life. Because the other thing we do is we don't give ourselves, and again, I'm talking generalization, but we often don't give ourselves permission to do the things that actually make us feel the best.
That feels like a luxury.
Yes. And it feels like you're being selfish, and it's not. It's about, you can't look after other people properly if you're a real giving person, which most you talked about mothers before, most mothers and most women are. You can't give to your full amount that you want to unless you're in a good place yourself. You just can't. So it's not selfish. Tap into it, give yourself permission to do those things that help to your well-being.
So let's pretend that I'm entirely broken, just for funsies. And we've been going through all kinds of things that, could possibly be self-care or self-maintenance or whatever it happens to be. And I just can't seem to get my head around either what it is that makes me happy, which is common in someone that's experienced trauma, that peace is simply disconnected, or what brings me peace, because I've been in survival mode for so long that peace is terrifying because it means that something else is going to fall apart. What are some things that you can recommend people do to try things out and to notice when the value is there?
Yeah. There's a couple of really good points you've raised there. So if we go back to how we were talking about before, really tuning into your body and noticing how things feel in your body has a big impact in terms of noticing and tuning in. But you've actually raised, when you talk about trauma and you talk about a lot of those underlying things when people can't find the joy or can't find the peace, that nearly always relates to underlying subconscious issues. Now, 95% of our behaviour is subconscious. So to give you an example, things like when you brush your teeth in the morning, you're doing it in a way where you're not actually thinking about what you're doing. It's subconscious behaviour. So that's something
mindful brushing.
Most people don't mindfully brush their teeth.
Right.
Or things like if you've been driving for 10 years, you get in the car, you don't actually have to think, oh, now I have to put my foot on the brake.
There is fear around change.
Oh, yeah.
There's also fear around staying stuck. Suzi, I know, has had an incredible background in having to look fear in the face and tell it to go fuck itself, and changing her world in some pretty dramatic ways. How do you reconcile, or how do you bring together the fears of change and stagnation and allow one to win?
Yep. Such a good question.
Add something to that real quick before you answer, Jodi.
Yep.
With resilience, how do you know when you're being too resilient? Like Marie was talking about being in an abusive relationship. You might think you have to be resilient to get through it, but sometimes you got to do what I do, which is burn it down. Right. I leave. So, but like when can you be resilient to a point of self-harm?
It's a really good question. It reminds me of that terminology, toxic positivity. It's almost like toxic resilience, where it's like people understand toxic positivity better, where you're positive to the point where you're not really addressing or looking at the underlying issues. So it sounds like a very similar thing that you're asking. You're absolutely right. I mean, part of being resilient is looking at the things in your life and going, okay, what's working for me? What isn't? What can I do about it? And sometimes that can be, like Marie talked before about abusive relationship. That can be, I'm really not in a good state. What's going on? How can I get to it? And it ties back to where I was talking about the subconscious, actually really looking at what's going on underneath, whether that's now or whether that's base things that might be a decision you made when you're 4 years old. Is that answering the question, Suzi? I'm not sure if I've...
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to really, I mean, I'm a trauma survivor, and I think because I have no pre-trauma identity. People say, go back to before the trauma. I was born in a religious cult that was abusive. I have no pre-trauma identity. And so the gift that's given me is that I'm constantly challenging my subconscious. Like, is that programming? Is that mine? Is that theirs? Like, what's mine and what's important to me? And does this resilience support my well-being and growth? I think you just have to be really, I struggle with the word critical. I don't mean it like critiquing, but really like analyzing, is this the right thing? And that's just the thing that takes, I think, time and wisdom and failing and getting right to really understand.
Yep. And it's one of those things that, again, my personal opinion, that often people who've had the most challenging lives, especially early in their lives, it builds something in yourself. Yes, it's a really hard road, and it's a road you wouldn't wish on anybody, but there's so much inner knowing and inner fortitude and inner ability to be resilient that gets built through those hardships in life. And some of the most amazing people I know in my life have had the most hideous things happen to them as small children. Right. And it switches on things in your own personality that you may or may not be conscious of that are just incredible assets to somebody's life. So it's interesting. I do a lot of my work with coaching talking about subconscious stuff, and a lot of it does go back, unfortunately, to trauma early in life. And hats off to you that you've actually obviously done all the work to work through that, and that's what a lot of people have to do. If something's a regular, reoccurring issue in your life, like stress, which was me, there is generally something underlying, or more than one thing underlying, that you're not aware of, that you need to go back and work through. So it's a real self-development process, not a 5-minute fix. You'd know that. It's not a 5-minute fix. It's a lot of work. But
all the money in the world couldn't buy you that in 5 minutes. Like, yeah, it's something that you have to unlearn and then relearn and then reassess.
And all the money in the world cannot buy you the absolute positive effect in yourself of actually doing that work. It is incredible.
Mm-hmm. And you know, we've brought up programming several times. And for those of you that are not familiar with NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, it is the base language of hypnotherapy. And it is the study of how we are programmed from different... Actually, you know what? Let me let the expert define it, because I think my definition is very personal.
You go for it. It's actually, NLP is quite broad. So I would be very interested to hear your opinion, and because it covers a huge range of things.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating study, but it is really the study of how to get past the barriers that we put up for ourselves, or that we've received through programming, or that others have received through programming. We've all been programmed. Y'all were raised by something. If it was a wolf, if it was a mother, I don't care. You were raised by something. And your subconscious mind, running things as it does, receives communication a bit differently than your frontal cortex, right? And so where your emotions may be up here up front, when we're looking at neuro-linguistic programming, we're looking at addressing programmatic issues or repetitive issues through the subconscious mind, the voice, and the experience that you can anchor back to. And one of the things that I talk a lot about in my speech, Red Lipstick and Resilience, is that when Jim passed, I started wearing bright red lipstick, because if you're looking at my lips, you're not looking at my eyes. And this little silver tube.
Oh my God, that makes me want to cry.
But I knew if I put my lipstick on and I could keep walking, that I was going to make it another hour. And then another.
I get it.
And keep going. And there's such beauty in finding those anchors in ways that are not only highly personal to you, but that can be shared with others. And so when I end that speech and I say, you know, hi, my name is Marie, what's your shade? I'm inviting people to find their anchor and find that one thing that they can look to bring themselves back to, a moment of strength that they programmed, that they gave themselves as a gift.
That's gorgeous, Marie. I'm so glad you shared that story around the lipstick.
Okay, no, you guys don't get all teary-eyed on me. Y'all hang in. I can see it. Oh, look at everybody's face. But you know, Jodi, I would love to hear how within the evolution of your expertise, neuro-linguistic programming became a foundational part of it, and what impacts you see it having.
Because it's foundational, because it's the subconscious. And as we said before, 95% of behavior is subconscious. So it's talking to that underlying thing that people aren't aware of that has enormous impact in our life. And it can, this is when we talk about a huge range, it can be as simple as, for some reason, just an example, some reason somebody, their go-to when they're not feeling great is chocolate. We'll just say that. Working on that stuff, going, well, that's not a behavior I want. How do I create something different? It can be something as, I mean, that's got fairly large underlying things if it's a regular high volume thing, but it's fairly surface in the scheme of life of go-to for chocolate. So it can go to things like that through to dealing with people with really serious underlying traumas and working out the base issue of that, and when did you first feel it, and actually going through and overturning those base decisions and values and perceptions of the world that you had in life. And I love that you found an anchor or something like the red lipstick, because anchoring, you would be aware, anchoring is one of those things. You anchor points in your life that are, well, a lot of people have anchors that aren't good for them, but in NLP, you work creative for anchors that are good for you. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was truly transformational to me. And you know, I'm not going to lie, I did not get into NLP for philanthropic reasons. I love psychology and I love to understand how to move an audience, right? If I'm on stage and I've got 500 people that I need to move into action, they're not there to hear my pretty words. Yes, sometimes they're there to see my cute shoes, but that's part of the brand. 10% of my job on stage is the speech. 90% of it is getting people to take action and to do something with either the new information they were given so that they understand that they now have more choices than they had previously, or to move them in a direction of simply taking in more deeply that which has been provided to them, because we've been able to move some of those, I call them my knee-jerk no's. Anybody have a husband that, like, you toss anything out and the first thing he says is like, no. And then he thinks about it for a day and a half and he's like, yeah, you know, maybe the thing that you said, it's fun. Let's play this game until we're 90. But a lot of people are programmed like that, where, you know, they've got the blocks up because they were told that people are going to try and talk you into things. And, you know, that if it's not your idea, it's not the best. When using the concepts of NLP in one's life, first of all, this is not something that should be done unsupervised. You should have somebody that knows a little bit about how to traverse the subconscious, because there's some scary shit that we all hid in there. And trust me, if you open that box, you're going to find out. How do you take and anchor more beauty, more peace, more love in your subconscious mind to override or to release some of those traumas?
I'm not 100% following. Can you say that again, Marie? Sorry.
If someone wanted to take the benefits of neuro-linguistic programming to create resilience, how can they start to self-identify some of their programming that could be replaced with an anchor or another program? Is it the repetitive nature of the experience? Because I know that, like, my New Year's Eve goal for like 4 years was to learn shit once, because I got tired of learning the same lesson over and over again. But, like, what other ways can we set up some flares in our lives that say, hey, this may not be crap that you want to carry around or keep doing for another 20 years?
Yep. If you're working by yourself, so you're not working with a professional, I would say developing self-awareness things. Now, there's different tools that you can use for that. So just say, as an example, something like your diet. Just say there's something, you brought up diet before, but something in your diet that you're not happy about. Being really aware of keeping food diaries and then looking at it creating things in your life that build that awareness is half the battle to actually being able to do something about it, because so many things we do without really realizing it. So if we go away from the food example, things like, just say you have a relationship pattern in your life where you're always attracting a certain type of, being a female, I'm going to say from a female's perspective, a certain type of male. Actually taking the time to be really self-honest and go, okay, what's my pattern here? Am I attracting people who like to control me? Am I attracting people who criticize me and think that that's actually helping and that's a habit? So going through and go, what are the actual patterns of these things? So you can apply this to any area of your life that is not the way that you want it to be. You can apply it to work situations. You can apply it to relationships. You can apply it to friendships. You can apply it to your family, which is an interesting one for most people. It's like, what do they say? Friends are your family that you choose. So nearly everybody has situations in their family where there's dynamics there that aren't great. So really, if you're working by yourself and not with a coach or a practitioner or a counsellor, by yourself, really develop that self-awareness. So diary and record keeping is a really good thing. If you're talking about past patterns, sit down, like we talk about the relationship things. Okay, what were the personality characteristics of Joe? Well, Joe, blah, blah, blah. How did Joe's behave in a day-to-day, blah, blah, blah? How did that make me feel? Blah, blah, blah. And do that with all of your relationships without
that sounds exhausting, Jodi.
But really, and some people do this mentally without actually writing it down. But that is an awareness thing where you can see your patterns, and that's a lot of the case. So you're making the subconscious conscious. That's a way you can do it by yourself.
Am I allowed to call my family members that I've used Suzi to replace and inform them?
Free will, Marie, free will, but you may not want to do that.
We'll see how it goes.
So, Jodi, tell me how you've implemented this as a professional, and how did you get on this path, and then how did it end up being a book?
Yep. So I got on this path basically because of my own challenges. So when we're talking about the subconscious and things working against you, that was definitely me. So most of my working career, I was in positions of sort of authority, accountability, but stress was pretty much a constant. So it came out of my own challenges, and it's why it's become my speciality, because there's nothing like coming from the point of, I've been there, to be able to kind of relate to people to some degree. Everybody's different. Everybody's experience is different. But you're coming from that, I've been there. I know how that related in my life. So it came out of that, and it developed. How do I do it? What I think was the other part you asked is basically started as a one-on-one coaching, which I still is in a lot of ways to me one of the most rewarding things, because you're actually working on that particular person's challenges and underlying issues that are coming up in their life. But so there's certain things we can do in ourselves, but there's certain structures in society, and workplace is a really good example of this, that can be not great for people's stress and resilience, and culture within organisations has an enormous impact on the resilience of the people in the organisation. So it's almost a natural progression going from one-on-one resilience with people working to leaders, because they're leading they're leading other people. But then going to that larger scale of business culture. So the book that you just put up is designed for the high-end managers, your CEOs, your CFOs, your CTOs, all those sort of people to go. I've put in 10 main cultural issues that I see come up regularly, and for them to look at it and go, that one applies to us. So again, going back to the realization thing, it's a realization piece. You've got to really be aware of something before you can address it. So that book is very much around these 10 major cultural issues that I see come up regularly, so that the CEO or the CFO or whoever they are can look at it and go, that's a problem in our organisation, and then they can go the next step in terms of addressing it. So
when you say culturally, are you talking about workplace culture, or are you talking about the culture at large? Because they do intersect.
They do intersect, but I mainly talk about organisational culture or workplace culture. Yeah. Culture at large is a much bigger issue, I think. Yeah.
Well, and I like, all I can imagine is myself grabbing this book and highlighting all the things that I think I see in my, like in an organization as an employee, and just like sliding it under the boss's door. And be like, just in case you wanted perspective, here it is.
So you're saying everybody should buy one for their boss and annotate it?
Yes. Yes. Don't tell them Jody told you to do it, because then they need Jody to help them get through it. But not a bad idea, Ms. Shattuck. I want to make sure that everybody can actually find Jody, because listen, we went through a lot of stuff today and it was cathartic as hell, but Jody is here to make impact. You can follow her at Jody Walkerling, and that's WOELKERINLING Enterprises, and Jody Walkerling on Instagram and LinkedIn. And make sure you go to her website. Make sure that you check out her book, because y'all, first of all, none of us are making it out of here by ourselves. Like, we need one another to build true resilience. Resilience seems like such an independent thing, but I'm here to tell you that if you are relying on yourself to manufacture or tap into some deep resilience that should be there because you think it should, or that you think you can manufacture in the moment, it's not. Resilience is something that comes from not only knowing yourself, but knowing that you have people that will be honest with you and call you on your shit sometimes, and that will stand up for you when you're not being kind to yourself and point those things out, which is not always comfortable. Trust me. But that's love. That's professional love. That's personal love. And that's somebody that you'd better keep around, because yes men do not provide you with resilience. That's why children are not yes men. They are not there to help you not build resilience. Just like they bring home germs that build your immune system, they test every living fiber of your being multiple times.
And it's constantly changing as they grow up. Sorry, just a simple point.
Messed up as hell. Jody, I want to thank you so much for being a kindred spirit, for being our Aussie business twin, and for simply having the love and the grace that you bring to this topic, because resilience is not easy, and neither is writing a best-selling book. So we're going to leave that there. Suzi, of course, you are the most amazing co-host ever, and thank you for your candor and vulnerability. And for those of you that are listening to Clutching Our Pearls, we want to thank you for showing up. You don't show up because we leave you a comfortable space to be in. You show up because you're here to grow. You're here to learn more about choices. And when you know what your choices are, and you've got ways to make different decisions, you have power. And that's what we want for every person that is on this earth and that is yet to come. Not to make too big of a statement. Thank you all so much for your time. We can't wait for the next episode, and we can't wait for you to find out.
Speaking of our next episode, we've got a little bit of a moment with our podcast coordinator. We've got some great stuff going on in the offices of fwdrEvolution. First of all, I was accepted into law school 2 weeks ago, so I get to continue on my path, which is very exciting. Secondly, and I think far more importantly, Miss Alona, our podcast coordinator, why don't you know what? She just, I don't want to say it. I want you to say it.
Okay.
She should say it, right?
I can do it. Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm Aldona. I came to the United States as a refugee. And yesterday I did the L for citizenship. And I'm a proud citizen owner in citizenship in the United States. And I'm so proud and excited and happy and
you make us better, Alona. We're so lucky to have you.
That's right. Alona, we are so lucky to have you on our team, to have you in our country, and to share the beauty and the love that you have brought to every part of what you do with us. And I could not be more blessed to call somebody a friend and a part of the revolution. I'm so glad that you are here, that you are safe, and that you are loved, because you are all of those things.
Thank you so, so much. I'm so glad and proud to be part of Revolutionary.
We love you. We know that the rest of America is going to love you. So we're just going to try to keep you for ourselves a little while longer. But baby,
thank you.
Oh.